So today we're going to continue our discussion about quadratic functions. We started off with section 8.1 where we talked about the basic key features of these things, the idea of, they're U-shaped. If the number in front of x squared is positive, the U goes up. If it's negative, the U goes down. Also the idea of the vertex. The vertex, if you have a U-shaped parabola, is the bottom point, the lowest point on the parabola. And if you have an upside down U, then the vertex is the top point, or the highest point on it, so a maximum, if you will. And then also we talked about the idea of an axis of symmetry. The axis of symmetry, very simply, is just the x value of the vertex. So if you have a vertex of 2, 4, then axis of symmetry is going to be x equals 2. So pretty simple stuff in that part. Then the last time we talked about something called vertex form. So vertex form is basically y, or f of x, whichever one they use, equals some version of x squared. So it might be like, x minus 3 squared, or x plus 2, with parentheses around it, squared, that kind of thing. And then a number on the end. And then in order to figure out the vertex of a parabola when it's in vertex form is really, really easy. Basically what you do, whatever number is in with the x in the parentheses, switch the sign on him, leave the other one alone, and that tells you the vertex of that particular parabola. All right, so today we've got something called standard form. And we'll talk about what standard form is and how we can work with it and that kind of thing. We're going to start off with something super easy. Maybe. There we go. All right, it says, what is the y-intercept of each function? Okay, so here's the deal with this. A y-intercept, I don't care how long the function is, how many terms it has, it could have x to the millionth as an exponent. Doesn't matter. The only thing that matters when you're talking about a y-intercept is what is the regular number in the function. So the first one, what's the regular number? What's the number that has no x's, no variables? Which number is that? Well, technically it's -6, but yeah. So that's it. So the y-intercept of 15, number 15, is -6. Over here, it's -0.7. How about 17? What is it for 17? Yeah, that's all there is to it. So when they ask you for the y-intercept, they're asking you for whatever the regular number is in a function. Really can't get much easier than that. Just identifying the regular number. So here we've got +5, +3, +2. That's why we can answer 6 questions in like 6 seconds, right? So the only quote-unquote tricky thing to the whole thing is, what if there is no number? What if you don't see a number at all? Then what would your y-intercept be? So we had something like f of x equals 2x squared minus 5x. What would our intercept be? It's so obvious that it sometimes seems hard. So it would be a lot easier if the lazy math guys weren't so lazy, right? Because technically what this is 2x squared minus 5x plus 0. So what's our y-intercept now? What's the number we see? Yeah. So if there is no number, just automatically know that your y-intercept is 0. Okay? The reason this works is because the y-intercept is on the y-axis. When you're on the y-axis, the x value is 0. You haven't gone left, you haven't gone right. You're right on the y-axis. So another way you can think about these is if I plug in 0 for all the x's, basically these guys go away. And that's all I'm left with. So it means your y-intercept is going to be at x equals 0 and y equals -6, if they wanted a point. So at all these guys here, x equals 0 and y equals the number, just whatever number's there, no variables. Okay, done and done. So you never have to worry about that one again. Questions? Yeah, so if you're taking like an SAT test and they say, what's the y-intercept of this function? That's like the easiest question they'll ask you. Okay, cool. All right, so let's move on to actual standard form. So we know that the vertex form, like we said, was some number, like x plus or minus some number, and then in parentheses squared, and then just an additional number tacked on at the end, right? So standard form looks like this. So this is standard form right here. Whoops. I thought I was still in highlighter mode. Oops. Let's try that again, shall we? All right. So standard form, it says ax squared plus bx plus c. Well, what are a, b, and c? They're just numbers. So again, let me just make one up here. If you had 2x squared minus 6x plus 5, something like that. I'm just making stuff up. You just follow the pattern, right? So a is the number in front of x squared. So in this one, a is 2. In this one, b is the number in front of the x. So b is -6. Bring the sign along with it. And then c is just the regular number. C is also, as we just found out, the y-intercept. So c is the y-intercept as well. Okay. All right, if you get nothing else out of today, absolutely nothing else, if you remember this bit, we will be successful. X equals minus b over 2a. Okay, pretty simple formula, right? Minus b over 2a. So the b and the a are from the standard form equation. So we have negative b over 2 times a. Okay? So x equals that. Okay, so what x are we talking about here? So for our example, and like I said, I just made these numbers up, so we probably won't get a pretty answer, but that's okay. We say minus b. Well, b happened to be a -6 already, right? So minus a -6 would be a +6. And then we have 2 times a. Well, a in this case was 2, so that's 2 times 2. So that would be 6 over 4, and like I say, not a particularly pretty answer. And since they're both even numbers, I can divide by 2. So x equals 3/2. So what is this x we're talking about? X equals 3/2. Well, that looks suspiciously like an axis of symmetry, and it is. So this is the axis of symmetry for this parabola. Okay? This is also the x-coordinate of the vertex. So it's a 2-for-1 special. We can figure out the axis of symmetry, and we also figure out the x-coordinate of the vertex. So we're halfway done with that idea, too. So again, kind of a big deal. All right?
It's a Monday.
All right, so let's check out some questions here. All right, so all kinds of things here. Y-intercept, axis of symmetry, and the vertex of the graph of each function. Okay. So let's start with the axis of symmetry. Well, let's do the y-intercept. That's easy. What's our y-intercept in this first one here? What, in number 21? What's our y-intercept? Yeah, couldn't really be much easier than that, could it? Cool. All right, so let's do our axis of symmetry. So x equals, now we're going to use that formula, minus b over 2a. So what is b in this case? What is the b value in this case? Keeping in mind, this is our standard format. So b is 8. Beautiful. So if b equals 8, then minus b is going to be minus 8, right? So the top is minus 8. Beautiful. Then the bottom is going to be 2 times the a value. What's our a value in this case? So this is b. Yeah, and this is a, right?
Yeah.
Cool. So that just means we're going to put a 2 in here, right? So then all we have to do is take negative 8 and divide it by positive 4. That'd just be negative 2. X equals negative 2, right? That's our axis of symmetry. Okay? So the y-intercept is 2. The axis of symmetry is x equals minus 2. Okay? Now, the last thing they asked us for was the vertex. So we know the vertex, I'm running out of space here, but that's okay, is when you have your U-shaped graph, right, which an x-squared graph is going to give you a U-shaped graph, right? The vertex is this bottom point here. All right, well, we've already figured out the axis of symmetry here is x equals 2, right? That's also the first point in the vertex. So the first point in the vertex is actually, it's negative 2. Is negative 2, right? How do we figure out the y value? That's the big question. That's probably the hardest part of this. Not that it's that hard, but that's what we need to figure out from here. Is it's like, okay, so our vertex. So we know the x value is negative 2. So we're halfway there, living on a prayer, right? How do we figure out the second part? What do we need to do? So remember, this is a y value, right? This is x, and this is y. Okay. So remember that f of x is just a fancy version of y. Okay. So this says y equals 2x squared plus 8x minus 2. Not minus 2, plus 2. So 2x squared plus 8x plus 2. Well, what is x? Do we know what x is?
Okay, I thought I pressed finish. Edit, save and close, and previously, and then finish.
What does x equal?
Yeah.
-2. Booyah! So what that means is in order to figure out what y is, we just go along here with the original function. So here, we're like I said, f of x is y. Same thing, right? So we just bebop along here and we say, all right, let's go ahead and put a -2 in here. And then a -2 in here. And that's it.
Oh.
All right, so I'm going to write over here. I'll probably just bring up a new screen for this guy. Okay. So y is going to be 2 times -2 squared, and plus 8 times -2, and then plus 2. All right. Order of operations says, let's start with the exponents, right? So -2 times -2, 2 negatives gives you a positive, right? And 2 times 2 is 4. So -2 squared is going to be 4. Remember, when you square a number, doesn't matter if it's positive or negative, your answer will always be positive. Okay? So now it's just going to be, instead of -2 squared, it's going to be 4. So this is just going to be 2 times 4. That's going to be 8. Okay? So we've taken care of exponents. We did our multiplying there. Now we move on. We got some multiplication to do here, right? So I have 8 times -2. So that's going to be -16. And then the plus 2, there's nothing you can do to him. He just comes along, right? Plus 2. Boom. Done. All right, so now we just add these guys together. Now, add them together any way you like. Use your calculator, obviously. Like I said, I came from the era where we didn't use calculators all the time. Matter of fact, we didn't even have them when I was a kid. We did have them by the time I was your age, but when I was like in grade school, nope. Calculator? What are you talking about? Anyway, so I usually just add the positives together. So I've got 8 and 2, so that's going to be 10 minus 16. So 10 minus 16 is -6. So this is your y value, which is the second point in the vertex. So our vertex is at -2, -6. That's probably the hardest part of this whole thing, and it's not that hard. Okay, so we're going to practice some of these to make sure we're good at it. And I probably should only put one problem on each one of these. But that's okay. I can just do a copy here and erase this stuff a little bit, and we'll be good to go. So let me do that.
I'm gonna sliding. It just depends like how far I get.
All right.
Which place
Let's go ahead and erase this, and we'll do number 22. Not to worry, I've got all this stuff written on the previous slide. So it's all good. I guess I could have left that part. Oh well. All right. So let's take a look at 22. So the first one is the y-intercept. That's easy peasy. What's our y-intercept in this case?
I was going to have them write and share the
What's our y-intercept?
comparison of the two and have
-3. Beautiful. All right. So the next thing, like I said, this is still ax squared plus bx plus c. C doesn't really come into play for this stuff. C comes into play when we start talking about the dreaded quadratic formula. Blah, right? But we don't have to worry about him for today. Okay. So our y-intercept is -3. Perfect. So next thing we want to figure out is our axis of symmetry, which is x equals some number. And we figure out that some number with the formula minus b over 2a, right? Okay, so then b in this case is 4, so minus b is going to be minus 4. So really when it says negative b, whatever your b value is, just switch the sign, right? So he's plus 4, we're going to go with minus 4. And then we're going to have 2 times a. Well, a in this case is minus 2. So I've got minus 4 over minus 4. So in this case, our axis of symmetry is x equals 1. So y-intercept, check. Axis of symmetry, check. And finally, we have to figure out the vertex. Well, the great part is we already know half the answer for the vertex, right? And that's x equals 1. So we have to figure out the y part. So again, all we're going to do is we're going to plug in 1, which is easy, right? Wherever we see x, come up with a y value. Because remember, f of x and y, pretty much interchangeable. F of x is just the fancy version of it. Okay. So y is the coffee and f of x is the latte, but they're both coffee, right? Okay, so let's go ahead and do that. So we're going to have minus 2. Then we have to do the exponent, right? 1 times 1 is still 1. So it's going to be negative 2. So our first number is going to be negative 2. So y equals negative 2. Then we do the next guy. So it's just 4 times 1. That's going to be plus 4. Right? And this guy we just bring along. And minus 3. Okay, so I've got 2 negatives. So I got a negative 2 and a negative 3. That's minus 5. So 4 minus 5 is negative 1. And that's our guy. Okay, so what does all this stuff do for us? Well, this is good if you're doing a graph. Now, we know this particular graph, because of the negative sign, is going to be upside down, right? So it's going to be something like this, right? We know our vertex is here at 1 and minus 1, right? And then we know our y-intercept, so that's just over here a little bit, is going to be at 0. Remember, technically it's 0 minus 3. So we come back here to 0 and we come down to minus 3. So that'd be like right there. Okay. So let's go ahead and draw an axis in here. That probably would have helped. But you'll get the idea. So there's our axis. That's our y-axis. Our x-axis is going to be a little above this, right? Because we've dropped down here 1. So this is minus 1. This is 1. Obviously not drawn to scale because this is supposed to be 3. Okay. But the point of the story is you have a basic idea what it looks like because I know the vertex, I know the intercept, I know it's going downward, so I just plot a couple points on a real graph, of which this is not. Okay. Now we got enough to show a basic shape of what our graph is. Capiche?
Thank you. Thank you.
Questions, comments, complaints? Thank you, Chloe. Hopefully everybody else is in the game. All right, so let's do a couple more and we'll call it. We're just getting warmed up with this stuff, so. All right, so same deal. So this one's got some ugly numbers, doesn't it? All right, so first things first, the y-intercept. What's our y-intercept on this guy? So we had talked about that a little bit earlier, hadn't we? I don't see a number here. The y-intercept is the plane number. So yeah, our y-intercept is just 0. Perfect. Fabulous. Okay. So then we need to figure out the axis of symmetry. So x again, here comes that thing again, minus b over 2a. And we've got some decimals to deal with, but it turns out it's probably not that bad. All right, so again, our a value is going to be 0.4, and our b value is 1.6. Okay, so we just use the numbers, and like I say, use your calculator for this kind of stuff. So we'd have minus 1.6, so we switch the sign on the b value, double the a value, right? 2 times 0.4. Get this thing to right, that's terrible. We shall try again. There we go. All right. So this is times point. I keep wanting to write the answer. That's my problem. I do that all the time. All right, one more time. Hopefully the last time. So times 0.4. There we go. So that's going to be negative 1.6 over 0.8. So don't let the decimals bother you. They're all lined up. Everything's cool, right? This is really just negative 16 over 8. So then our x value is just going to be negative 2. And that is our axis of symmetry. So y-intercept, check. Axis of symmetry, check. Vertex. All right, this one's going to be a little bit of pain, not going to lie. All right. So again, this is going to be y equals 0.4 and then times negative 2 squared. So let's do that part first. So negative 2 times negative 2, that's going to be positive 4. And positive 4 times 0.4 is going to be 1.6. Again, please use your calculators on these. Then we've got 1.6, and then that's going to be times negative 2. So 1.6 times negative 2, use your calculator, you get negative 3.2, which means that y is going to equal negative 1.6. So to figure out our vertex, then we just say, well, we'll slide him down here in the corner. So our vertex is x equals minus 2. We already knew that, right? And then here's our y value here. So then y is minus 1.6. Not the prettiest vertex around, but there it is. Okay. And that's it. Vertex, check. Okay. All right, last one. So for this guy, what's A? What's A going to be here? B. Like I said, for the moment, it doesn't really matter, but here's C. What's our A value going to be? Positive or negative? So yeah, we agree that when you don't have a number there, that it's a 1. But then we get that minus sign to deal with, right? Yeah. So A in this case is going to equal minus 1. So A equals minus 1. Cool. Then B is minus 2, and C, like I said, is minus 5. But C also is the y-intercept, right? So we can write that down real quick and say, well, okay, so our y-intercept is going to be minus 5. Okay? All right, so axis of symmetry is going to be the dreaded minus b over 2a, right? So x, if I can get this thing to right, that would be cool. So x is going to be minus b, so switch the sign on this guy, so he becomes positive 2. and double this guy. So he's -1, right? So if I double -1, I get -2. So 2 over -2 is -1. All right, so axis of symmetry is x equals -1. Okay, y-intercept, check. Axis of symmetry, check. Vertex, this is all we got left, right? So the vertex, and we already know the first part, right? X equals -1. We just have to figure out what y is. Sweet. So again, same deal. We're going to go ahead and plug in -1 wherever we see x. So there and there. All right, so -1 times -1 is +1, but then it's times -1 again. So our vertex is going to be y equals, the first term will be -1. Next guy, we've got -2 times -1. It's just +2, right? Cool. And then -5. So I have -1 and -5, that's -6, plus 2 more is going to be -4. Vertex, check. Okay? And again, we know this graph is going to be going like this because this is positive. And this guy's negative, so this graph will be going like that. Okay? So that means over here the vertex is a minimum. And over here your vertex is a maximum. Okay? Questions? Okay, so it wasn't so bad, right? So, like I say, anytime we throw something new at you, it's a lot all at once. And it'll get better as we go along. But again, like I said, the big thing to remember on this one is right there in lovely light green. X equals minus b over 2a. Because like I said, that not only gives you your axis of symmetry, that also gives you the x value of the vertex. So it gives you one answer and gives you half of another one. Not bad. Buy one, get one 50% off. Not quite BOGO, but pretty good, right? So that's the big deal. All right, guys. So like I said, that's a good stopping point for today. We'll review some of these next time after we've forgotten about them, and we'll go from there. So I'll go ahead and shut down the recording. I've already got attendance. You guys are good there, and hopefully we'll see you tomorrow.